I'm Tanya Fox, and you're listening to Fox Talks Business Podcast. I started my career in the corporate world, but always played to my own tune and loved to think outside of the box. This didn't always serve me well with the bosses, so I made the decision to become an entrepreneur. And that little seed of entrepreneurial curiosity continued to grow as I branched out into retail, service, and franchise businesses. Now, I have been fortunate to have amazing successes in the last 2 decades, but they did not come without some really big failures and even bigger lessons learned. And that's why I started this podcast, not just to share the failures, but to show you how you can turn every failure into a success. We're going to hear from some amazing humans from around the world that are going to share their stories of the good, the bad, and the motivational entrepreneurial life has to offer. After all, life is too short to make all of the mistakes yourself, so why not learn from each other? And of course, we're going to have some fun, because as I always say, well, you know what? I'll tell you that at the end of the episode. Hey, Foxy listeners, thank you so much for joining me today. I am super excited for our guest, Patty. Patty, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you so much, Tanya. I love that you call your people Foxy. That's adorable.
Well, I figured I got to use my last name for something, right?
Yes, great last name. The options are endless, actually.
I know. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Where, like, kind of what's your background? How did you get started into this?
Yeah, so I came from the corporate environment, just being programmed to go to school to get a good job. The big dream for my parents was for me to have an office, a car, and a cell phone. And I'm not even kidding when I say that. So they're very blue collar in their careers and what they did. And so I went into the corporate world, and just the conditioning was like, okay, I have to climb the ladder. And that's all I knew. And so the higher the ladder I went, the more miserable I was, and I wasn't understanding it. And it wasn't until, I know I don't look a day over 28, but it was 2008. I was like, out of nowhere, get the pink slip. And then everything, like the rug gets pulled right from under you. And I literally, as I'm walking out with my cardboard box, I had this like big epiphany, like, oh my God, I'm no different than the French fry guy at McDonald's. I thought I had done everything right. And I didn't really piece things together, but it was 2009. I was unemployed. My husband was unemployed at the time. And I picked up Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad. So many people talk about that book.
Yeah.
And it truly changed my life, because I really recognized I was operating from a space of trading time for money. And so I'm like, oh, okay, so all I have to do is be an entrepreneur. So I didn't really know any entrepreneurs in my life, in my circle. And then it wasn't until 2012. In between that time, I got the job in corporate, but in my head, I was like, okay, I need to step out of this. At the time in 2009 or so, there weren't any coaches that could help you with career coaching, or so I thought. Ventured off onto entrepreneurship in 2013. As a matter of fact, literally January 9th of 2013. So it's been 10 years since I've been an entrepreneur now, which is really exciting.
Well, happy
when
anniversary.
I look back at it. Yeah, thank you. It really is really exciting, because so much has changed in that time, and I've learned and all the things. And while in my corporate career, I negated having been in corporate for so long, what I did when I went into entrepreneurship, I was like, no, I'm an entrepreneur, right? But the fact of the matter is, I had amassed a lot of great experience in corporate. And so right out of the gate, I said, okay, well, I want to do coaching. I was doing consulting, and I was talking about social media. Well, guess what? Everybody else was talking about that as well. And so I really wasn't standing out. And therein came the big opportunity for me, is to find, how can I find my differentiation, which is something that I had learned in corporate that I can apply into what I'm doing now. So I was on a consulting gig, and it was a new product launch introduction in Australia. And we had a whole bunch of people, the brand managers and the agency, and I was a consultant on the job, and we're all on the Zoom call. And I was looking at this, and everyone was talking about this new product introduction, around the positioning of it and all these things that I had heard for so many years prior. And in that moment, I was like, oh my God, these people are talking about a cookie. It was literally, we were talking about the launch of a chocolate chip cookie. And I'm like, why are we not doing that for ourselves in the entrepreneur space? So that became the catalyst for me saying, I am going to talk about positioning and just how important it is, because there's so much commoditization in what we do as service providers. And so it's my goal to change that, because we're all so unique and we really rob ourselves of the opportunity to differentiate.
Well, and I love this. This is one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show, because I think this is still something that plagues, as social media grows and grows. There's people that are going, either one, I can't do that because there's so many people already who are doing that, or two, I'm kind of stuck and I know I'm really good at what I do, but everybody else just sees me as another one. Where I want to be the one. So what are some things, when people are sort of feeling like this, how do they sort of figure that out? How do they get to a point where they can be that person that stands out? Because I think they struggle with that a lot.
Yeah, I mean, in the past decade alone, the influx of coaches and service providers and that has grown exponentially, and it's not dying down any time at all. I mean, there's coaches for everything. So I'm at it from the context of service providers. I also work with lawyers, chiropractors, doctors, etc. So anybody in the service-based industry, the situation is that most people hang their hats on their accolades or their certifications or academic accomplishments. And quite frankly, that is just the cost of entry, meaning it's not a competitive advantage to say that you have a certification anymore. It just isn't. And so we hang our hat on that. And at the end of the day, the person on the receiving end just wants to know, can you help me with this problem or challenge? Do you even understand me? And by the way, I'm bombarded with thousands of things, messages all day long. Am I even going to stop to pay attention to what it is that you're saying? So it's extremely challenging. And the other side of it is, I read in a Harvard Business Review article where we have traditionally heard that it takes 7 contacts, right, in order to make a sale. Absolutely not the truth. According to the study, it's over 27. It's like 27 or 28. So add that to the mix. Yeah, you're right. If you're feeling like I'm just not standing out, you're absolutely right. And so the idea here is to really focus on the differentiation. It's not about being better. You can't say you have a faster mousetrap or you're better or we're the best. I mean, that's all hyperbole. Instead, what is it that is creating contrast in what it is that you're doing? So, for example, I could have easily said I'm a business coach or I'm a marketing coach or digital marketing. But fact of the matter is, there's hundreds, thousands of us out there in the internet marketing space. But when I started focusing on where can I find my white space? So I'm translating this back to you, assuming that you're in a niche that is profitable, which is, as you've heard, the big 3: health, wealth, relationships. I think a 4th one is passion projects. For example, people who are in the prepper market or crafters, or people who really love their dogs, right? Those passionate areas of our lives that we're like investing tons of money in that. So that's the 4th category, in my opinion. So assuming that aside, okay, you're in a profitable niche. Well, now it's a matter of finding the white space. And what I mean by that is, and I can always tell when somebody is commoditizing what they do, because I'll ask, hey, so tell me what you do. And they're like, I'm a health coach, or I'm in I whatever that association is, health coach. And I'm like, you just commoditize yourself. It's not enough anymore. But what if you said, I'm a health coach for women over 50, post-menopausal and going through osteoporosis, whatever, right? So finding that area of specialization, that's another example of finding the white space. So that's what I mean by that. So specializing, when you specialize, when you hone in on an area of specialization, you can not only create contrast, because that's like, oh, that's really interesting. The other side of it is that you can actually charge higher prices for that, because there's this inferred specialization and expertise. And so when you're looking at that, make sure that in what you do, is it too macro, or can you drill down? And the only way to do that is if you're still trying to figure out, oh, well, where do I fit in? I think a great thing to do is just even take a look at your client roster, asking your clients, hey, what's been your experience? Do you know what I mean? Like, just asking them for that feedback, because we're so in our own stuff that we don't see all we bring to the table in such a unique way. We take it for granted, right? That zone of genius that other people are just like, wow, how do you do that? So those are the big opportunities, but I would say find your white space. That's the big, big opportunity in so many cases.
Well, and I think it's so true what you said that, oftentimes, we hear the word niche down and it's like nails down a chalkboard to me, for myself, because we hear it so much, right? Like only do one thing. And to me, I feel like, tell me how you feel about this. To me, I felt like niche down isn't about getting rid of all of your expertise. It's just making it more compact so it's easier to digest for people. What are your thoughts?
Agreed. Because at the end of the day, right, we want to capture mind share. So what's the mind share that you capture? So my goal is for you to think about, if you hear my name, Patty Dominguez, I want it associated with like, oh yeah, she's the one who focuses on positioning in category of one. So can you feasibly capture a 2-3 word phrase in the mind of your prospects or the people who know you? Right? Just to simplify, right? If we were to pare it down, it's not to say that's all I can do, because I can do all kinds of things. But at the end of the day, where are you capturing the mind share? So I think it's a lot of the fear that comes in with saying, oh, I want to niche down, or am I getting too narrow? No, there's going to be other opportunities that will come to you as a result of all of the other things that you can do. I look at it as, the important thing is, what's the mind share that you're capturing? Do you have a 2-3 word phrase that people would know you for? Because again, people are so busy. It's such a cluttered world. How are you standing out? And so that's what that's about. It's like, how are you capturing the mind share?
And I think it's true, because I think, if we think about any other brands, like you can name them out and sort of what they do, because they've really worked on that. But it's not just for big brands. So I love that you're making people kind of go, still treat yourself like that. So people go, oh yeah, I know who that is. I know what Coke is, I know who Patty is. I know who Tanya is.
Yeah. And that's what it is. I mean, it's true. I look at it where if I give you one adjective or one word, if I'm thinking about a car and you think about safety, what's the car that comes up to mind, right? You're like, oh, it's right. Like, I'm like, oh, or if I want luxury, what do I think about? Luxury, fast, performance, BMW, right? So there's just certain things that we think about automatically. And that's what the big brands are doing so very carefully, because I can tell you, going back to that consulting gig about that chocolate chip cookie, they were talking about how is that chocolate chip cookie going to work in the lives of the mom on the go, and the dad who is putting it in the lunchbox, and the kids who are having to go to some kind of an after school activity. The context of how that particular product is used is very different by the person that they're talking to. So that's what I mean about, like, you have to have that in place to really understand the messaging so that there's a match, right? So that the person is like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I need, because people are only dialed into what's in it for them, right? So they want to know what's in it for them. So that was just that realization. I'm like, wow, there's so much complexity in how the big brands position their products for the people on the receiving end, depending on the context of where they are, who it's for, geographically, demographically, psychographically, all of the things. And I just really believe wholeheartedly that people don't do that in the entrepreneur space enough. The market research really falls flat in that regard. It's like that rigorous foundation that is needed is completely bypassed. And in the long run, it just leads to random acts of marketing when you don't have it in place. So that's the other essential side of it. It's just like doing this foundational work first.
Well, and I love what you said earlier too about the certifications and stuff just being a cost for entry, because I'm seeing that more and more. And I always laugh when I see posts where people are like, oh, I just got this or I just got that. Because these days I find that awards and certifications are easily bought. And I
Yes.
think that
Yes.
it's hard to go, did you win that award or did you just buy advertising space and get that award? So I feel like myself
Yeah.
personally, they don't mean anything anymore. They don't have the clout that they used to, when I first started in business 24 years ago, right? That it was very heavy on your certifications. And now people are like, where'd you buy that?
Yeah, and it's funny, right? People are more discerning, or their BS meter is like, okay, what'd you do? Right? What did you do to do that? But conversely, if you were to show, and here's the power of story, right? It's never going to go out of style. It's the proof points that you can play up in the marketing that you do via story. So this is something I tell my clients all the time. So if you want to, another way to stand out, or from a positioning standpoint, is sharing those proof points, right? Like, where's that data that shows that you have created those transformations for people? Because that's what people are looking for, right? They're looking for those convincers that show that you can help. Never about the certification. It's about,
Right.
how can you help me? I just want to know that you can help me.
Almost that before and after picture. They want to see the before and the
Yes.
after and go, oh, I want to be the after.
Absolutely. And it gives them the confidence, because again, the whole process of, know, like, and trust is something else that foundationally is not going to go away. It's not going to go away. And I think the other side of it, in looking at the evolution of social media and being a celebrity, means different things. I mean, I'm super impressed with how, and again, perhaps TikTok is not for everybody, but the thing that I see is that there's a more authentic positioning on TikTok. Like, people are telling the real stories and real celebrities, because I think Instagram, with the perfect eye candy, perfect pictures, perfect life, perfect jet, perfect food, it's, people are tired of it, and people just want to have these real experiences with real people. And I think that there's a big opportunity, and that's where things are moving toward. And I know for me personally, when I started sharing more about who I am authentically as a brand, right? Because if you're in a service-based industry, people are buying you. So I really want to make note of that, because people talk about, well, there are so many competitors out there. Yes, but there's only one of you, right? And at the risk of sounding like there's only you, the one of you, like a Dr. Seuss book, but it really is true. And yes, you can be a celebrity. And when I mentioned that to my clients, they're like, well, because they're comparing themselves to the big people in their space. But you don't have to be that big person in the space. I think one of the most brilliant blog posts is that 1,000 True Fans by Kevin Kelly, where when I read it, it was a big like aha moment for me. I'm like, oh, that's totally doable. 1,000 true fans, the people that love what you do, they look forward to what you have to offer, they buy everything, they're super loyal, and they tell others. 1,000, and just with 1,000 true fans, you can make more money than you ever thought possible. And so that's what it is. It's being a celebrity in that little microcosm, long tail population, right? The 1,000 true fans. And so I think that's another opportunity, is to release the comparisonitis, be the celebrity. And what does that celebrity status mean? Is being authentically you, sharing more of your stories. Stories connect. People buy, because at the end of the day, for me, people can learn how to do your positioning or your elevator pitch, or how to craft like your masterclass or whatever. They can find that anywhere, but they're not going to get it with my version and my core value system, in the way that I teach things, in the way that resonates with those people that want to be part of my community. So be a celebrity in your little 1,000 true fan pocket. And that's, I think, another big opportunity that people miss.
I think it's important for people to hear that, though, because I think these days there's so many people that are feeling the competition, right? Like, more followers just means more. And I love that you brought that article up, because I think it's a big thing, because you can have 1 million followers, but if you, and I can't remember who it was that came out and said, I have 100,000 followers. I tried to sell a t-shirt for $20 and I had one sale. So followers don't mean anything, right? Like, but we get so stuck on that old popularity contest, which I know, like, for me, and I'm assuming for a lot of my listeners, was like bane of my existence when I think back to like high school. I kind of was in everything, like, right? Like I was in like the cheerleaders, I was in like the goth before it was goth group. And like I just kind of fit in everywhere, right? So it was like I just
Yeah,
never
yeah.
wanted to play that game. And I really love that you said, because I think this is important for people to hear, that it's not about playing the popularity game. It's about how many people can you genuinely help? And like you said, can you become a celebrity in that group? Because being a
Yeah, in
celebrity
their
is
eyes.
more
Yeah.
than just a number that doesn't mean anything or doesn't calculate to anything.
It is true, because the numbers on social media, it's just like vanity metrics. And again, I really think that things are really shifting in terms of thinking that that's the only uh metric that matters in order for people to be seen as some kind of a celebrity. I don't see that anymore. And I think I think it was Dan Kennedy who he said it in a really weird way, but he's like, people are just starving to be led. They're walking around with their like umbilical cords, like looking where to to plug into. And so what I really equated that to is that you want to be a leader, right? So it's not just about being the expert in what you do, because that's something else that I learned through my evolution as an entrepreneur, is I was very much into learning mode, because it was really important for me to back up what I was saying and teaching. And I'm always sharpening the saw in terms of keeping my skill set fresh. That's very important to me. But the other part of it that I was missing for some time was like the whole thing about being a leader. So being a celebrity, being a leader, not being scared to say, these are my peeps, like these are the people, we're going to rock it together, and all of the things, and really creating the movement. And it starts with just a handful of people. I mean, I remember when I first started the membership that I have, there was one person. And I actually thought to myself, oh my God, is this even worth doing? I'm like, no, I'm going against the thing that I talk about. It's like we all have to start somewhere. And
Yeah.
people don't ever really go beyond that and understand that if you're in it, you should be in it for the long haul. Because the other thing that's a disservice is this, like, make $1 million in 2 weeks. You know what I mean? Like this
Yeah.
ridiculous hyperbole that's out there that we know is simply not true. So it's about having those honest conversations of what it really takes. And people are like, thank you for saying stuff. I heard something the other day that was really excellent, where somebody had said to me, she's like, I just love your style. I'm so guru'd out. And I just want to have honest conversations. And thank you for telling me the way it really is. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like people
But I
want
think it's true. I
real,
think that
authentic.
we have this, people sometimes have, and I deal with this with my clients a lot, is that, they'll say like, oh, I want to make $1 million. And I go, what are you willing to give up? And they're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, what are you willing to give up? I've been there. I had a multi-million-dollar company, and it was the most miserable I'd ever been in my life, making great money, but working a ton, like a ton. And it wasn't worth it, because I had all of this money. I had amassed great wealth and had no time to spend it. So like, what was the point? Like really, what was the point of it? And when I finally scaled back and went, how much do I really want to make to be really comfortable? I led a much healthier and a much more enjoyable life. And I don't vacation for 2 weeks every year anymore. Like, cause that's really all I could afford when I was in that high tech. So I think sometimes people have a skewed view of what it takes to be there. And social media has done a lot of that, right? Because we see people in, these big, beautiful homes and all of that other stuff. When I see it, all I can think about is, God, I would not want to have to clean that. Like, it's just not like that. And my husband's like, why does your mind go there? And I'm like, because I'm looking at it going, are you kidding me? Like, that's just too much, just too much.
Yeah. Can I tell you, Tanya, the thing to me that was a revelation was, I think it was 2018. No, I hadn't done a core values exercise in many, many years. And I did it again. And I realized that I'm like, oh, freedom is my highest value. No wonder I was so miserable in my corporate job, because I worked with great people. I had friends, smart people. I was intellectually stimulated, but I was so miserable. I'm like, why am I so miserable? Because my highest value is freedom. And I love, like, for me, when I started understanding the power of working within your core values, to your point, it really put into context, what does it mean to me to have a business that's successful? And to me, it's like the freedom for me to do what I want to do when I want to do it. And so to your point, if it means giving up the prospect of having a $10 million business or $5 million business because I'm so tied to the business, then that wouldn't be for me, right? But what does the business look like that is going to create the situations, the environment where I can live happy, my best life, where I have more than enough, and it's abundant and I feel great. And so I think the other side of it is that people don't look at their core values early enough to recognize, like, what does it mean for you? They think it's $1 million. Is it really $1 million, or what is it that you really want from this whole deal?
Yeah. And I think that when you can figure that out, when you can realistically figure that out, it's a lot easier to do everything, because then you're not trying, like, you have a different goal set. And that could be maybe more than that. I mean, I've had some people who went way beyond that. They're like, oh, it's not actually that. It's actually 5 that I want. And that's great if that works for you. But again, it has to be, I think, something that works for you. And then from that, the messaging becomes a lot easier. And a lot more realistic for, like you said, for you. Some people thrive in a corporate world and they just adore it. I think I would make the worst employee.
Yeah.
I know I would. I know if I went back to, I didn't make a good employee when I was in corporate. That's why I left in the first place, because I was like, I cannot do this. Not kind of my cup of tea. But I think we get stuck in trying to create, or trying to figure out a dream that we think we should have, as opposed to creating the dream and the life that we actually want and need. We've kind of talked about a little bit about, figuring out your white space. Let's assume that somebody has, right? Like they've done the work, they've kind of figured out what is the next step for them to take? Because just knowing it yourself isn't enough. How can they work, or what are some tips that you can give them for actually getting that out there to other people?
Yeah, I think one of the things, I don't know, people are going to want to hear this, test out the different hooks of how you introduce what you're doing. I mean, I tested out so many different things in the way that I was explaining what I do. And it wasn't until I crafted different iterations and then would test it out with people. And when I finally got tell me more about that, right? Because curiosity is such a powerful driver to incite people to stop them in their tracks. And literally they'll ask you, tell me more. That's how you know. I'm like, okay, I nailed it. Like, finally, I nailed it. And what was so interesting is once I started and I figured out that elevator pitch, or that hook, or the thing that I can do in a way that's really different, then I just started pitching to do podcasts or masterclasses and whatnot. And that was more intriguing, because if I would have just said, I'm a digital marketing coach, they're like, okay, now, what are we going to talk about? Funnels, and just, again, very commoditized things. And so the way to do it is to test it out. Just test out the messaging in a different way with contrast in mind. So what I mean by that, it goes back to, Seth Godin's purple cow. We're driving down the highway and we see cows. We're like, oh, cool, cows. And you see a purple one. You're like, well, wait a minute. We need to pull over and take pictures of this purple cow because it's so amazing. That's contrast. And so when I say positioning, that's contrast in the sea of sameness of talking about being in the marketing space. So that's where you have to, again, find the thing that makes you different, something that sounds new, unique, and exciting, and then test out the way that you would say it in a clever hook so that you get people's attention and you've nailed it when they say, that's really interesting. Tell me more.
Yeah. And I love that, because I think I love that you gave all of those steps, because I think oftentimes we hear about this, but then how do you gauge that, right? Because like you said, sometimes you get so stuck in it and you're like, well, this makes sense to me. Like, I'll just kind of go with it. But I love, that thing of, if you can get somebody to go, wait, what's that? Hang on, like, tell me more about this, then you're on the right path for it.
Yeah, you've nailed it. You're like, oh my God, this is so exciting. I nailed it. The other thing is, you can't be afraid to just really claim that expertise. I think that's the other side of it. I see this so much, and I know you probably the same, where people feel weird about saying, oh, I'm an expert at so-and-so or what have you. and they get really bogged down with that. And I know that I remember being on a podcast one time, and this woman said, she's like, well, how do you know you're a positioning expert? I'm like, go to positioningexpert.com, you'll see. And she was like, she was blown away. She's like, that is the most hilarious thing. It's like, we teed it up perfectly for you to say that. I'm like, no, you cannot wait for anyone to anoint you the expert. Like, you literally have to claim your space. And if you don't, nobody else is going to believe you. That's the other big thing, is that you have to claim that status. Again, if you're going to be that celebrity, if you're going to be the leader, you got to start showing up in that way. And that takes a little bit of courage and perhaps some risk. But I'm telling you, on the other side of that, it's like people will believe you, right? I mean, of course, you have to back up what you say you're going to do. Right. And so all of this is assuming that you have a process for creating that transformation for people. But once you have that, yeah, claim your expert status.
Well, and I think it's easier. Like, I even think I had, I think it was about 4 months ago or something, had taken a personality test. And I remember showing people, like, you got to see what this thing said about me. And they were like, oh, that's so horrible. And I'm like, really? Because I love it. Because literally the line said, I have an intensity that can frighten others. And I was like, that's the best thing I've ever heard. Like, I want that to be a tagline for me. Tanya Fox, an intensity that frightens others.
And I would put it on your website.
Yeah.
I'd put it on your website in your About Me section.
And I was like, this is great, because I mean, it came from a very, I think it was the Myers-Briggs assessment or something like that. So I'm like, I feel like I've certified in saying that I have an intensity that frightens others, because I have a company that told me that. But I thought it was so funny how everybody's perspective on that line was so very different, and it varied right across the spectrum. Yes. But as soon as I said to them, really, I thought it was so awesome, like, when I got excited about it, when I put my spin on it, all of a sudden I really watched how everybody's perspective and how they then thought of that completely changed. And so going to like your point of saying, when you sit there and say, absolutely 100%, I'm the expert in this, like, check me out, like, here it is, then all of a sudden you can change people's perspective on that line. And now we all laugh at it. You know, if I say something and we're all out together and I get really excited about something, like, they all now go, Tanya, an intensity that frightens others. I'm like, this is totally caught on, just because I'm like, that's the best thing I've ever heard in my life.
I love it. I love it. I think that's so smart, and that's so good. And honestly, all BS aside, I think, because personally on my own site, on my own website, the page that gets visited quite a bit is my About page. I thought that was really interesting. And that just goes to show you that people want to follow a personality, right? We can be the practitioner of the thing that we do. We can be the marketer of the thing that we do. But I think a bigger opportunity is being the personality of the thing that we can do. So I really found that to be true. And if you go onto the About of my homepage, like, there's some storytelling in there, and literally people would say, oh, that thing that you said about country music, oh my God, I totally agree. I'm like, what? They're like, yeah, on your About page. I'm like, oh my God, people really read it. So I'm just envisioning that one statement of yours is so killer. I would 100% put on your About page. It's so good.
Well, and I think it's just something that sticks, right? And that's one thing it took me a long time in my life to come to terms with sort of who I am. Now, if you would have said that to me 20 years ago, it would have absolutely devastated me, because all I wanted to do was like be that person that kind of fit in. I was trying not to be seen, because when I first started in business, I was in accounting, women in accounting in high positions. That did not happen. So I was just trying to like fly underneath the radar. It took me a long time to go, I can't do this. Like, it took me so much time and energy not to be that intensity that frightens others. And once I really embraced that, I found that it really helped me to sort of shape everything that I, did in my business. And that's what I want for other people, is to realize, like you were saying, and the reason why I wanted to have you on the show is to realize it doesn't matter how many other people do it. Nobody is going to do it like you. So you can have everybody in the world could be doing the same thing. There's something about you that's going to be different. So I love that you said that. And I love also that you said, like, pick that one thing that you find that is easy, or you're like, oh, I can't charge for that. Like that's like super easy.
Right.
That's your superpower.
Yes, indeed. I agree 100%. I think people bypass the brilliance that's within them. And I think this is the value of having a great coach, somebody who can help you to see those blind spots, to assess and like, okay, what's stopping you from really claiming your expertise in this thing? This is what I'm seeing. I feel like people complicate things because I was guilty too. I was like, oh, I just want to give more, give more, give more, give more. No, because that's confusion, it's chaos, it's a cacophony of garbage. You know what I mean? Like you're just throwing the kitchen sink as opposed to saying, this is the thing I'm known for. This is where I can help you with. This is what I can rock out with certainty. And like you say it confidently and and people are going to pay you for that. Don't feel the need to throw more to somehow prove that you're good enough. Just do that thing that you're so brilliant at, that you think is so easy. And so if that were the case, like, yeah, just keep it super simple. I think that's the other side of it, is keeping things simple. Like avoid the complexity that just causes so much clutter in your business, in my opinion.
Well, and it would be great to do stuff that's super easy, right? Like I always kind of go, why do we do stuff that's consistently hard for us? Like, wouldn't it just be great to just
Right.
make money off the easy stuff and be like, that was nothing. Like my most successful day, or the day where I go, that was easy. Like if I'm saying
I
that at the end
love
of the
those
day,
days.
those are the perfect days for me because I get more energized because I'm not having to do all of the stuff you don't like to do.
Yeah. Agreed. Just, let it be easy, as they say.
So if someone's out there and they're like, I kind of know, but I'm just not quite there. Like, I just like need more help. How can they, get more obsessed with you? How can they learn more from you? How can they work with you? Give us all of the details.
Thanks, Tanya. I have a positioning quiz. I think it's really helpful because on the back end of that, you get a report when you go to positioningquiz.com. You get a report and it gives you my framework for what I talk about of why positioning is important. And it goes into internal positioning, external positioning, and then activation. Most people focus on putting their thing out, activation, or saying, should I be on TikTok? Should I be on Instagram? And they go into tactics, and you really want to have the strategy first. So by going to positioningquiz.com, you can get that. And then on the back end, you are added to the newsletter, and I'm a big giver. I love giving freebies and surprising and delighting. So you'll get a freebie course on how to know what your superpower is, how to stand out. I give the templates and the whole course there for that, as well as just other things, podcasts like on how to test things out, how to monetize quickly. So it all starts with that one quiz if you go to positioningquiz.com.
Well, thank you so much for all of this. I think there's a lot for people to, even sort of take for themselves to take a moment to stop and think differently about how they're, approaching the social media space and even just getting out there. So I really thank you for your time and all of your stories.
Thank you, Tanya. I really appreciate you. It's been an honor and a privilege, and I really look forward to seeing what comes of this whole thing for other people to position their brand of profit.
Wow. Just amazing guests. The one thing I love about having guests like this is when you really get a lot of tangible take home things that you can take. And I really think that Patty gave that to us because, in this world where we're constantly inundated, like we said in this episode of, trying to get the numbers up and all of that other stuff, it's good for us to take a moment and to take a step back and go, what do I really need? What do I really want to make myself happy? And how can I build that community that's really invested in who I am, what it is that I do, and are willing to kind of support me in that, and to, to be able to join my stuff. Cause at the end of the day, that's what we really want, right? Like I said, it doesn't matter if you have 1 million followers, if nobody buys anything that you're putting out there, what is the point of that? So what I would love to challenge you with doing today is taking that step back and going, how can I present myself to people that is going to make them sort of question me? Now, when I say question you, I don't mean like, are you really good at this? I mean, to make them kind of go, Wait, what is it that you do? Tell me more about this. I'm really interested in it. It's one of the reasons why you see now on most of my stuff, beside my name, it says EBT. A lot of people will go, "What's an EBT?" Which I then say, "It's an emergency business technician." And then they go, "What is that?" It's the question I get all of the time, and I absolutely love it. And I say, I help entrepreneurs who have been in business for 3 or more years to, reboot lost passion, to start growing the profit that they actually want, to fall in love with their business again, or potentially to shift to something else if what they're doing right now is no longer serving them. And that always goes into a bigger conversation. It's one of the best things that I did for my business. So I hope that you take time to do this. There's also a lot of great stuff that's coming on. I hope you were able to join the summit on the 23rd. I know we had advertised it in a previous podcast and we had it up on our social media. I want to know what you thought about this episode. I want to know what you thought about the summit, and I want to know what your elevator pitch is. Send them to me and I'm going to pick the top 3 and then we're going to give you some advertising. So you're going to want to make sure you got that. You can email it. You can send it on any of the social media platforms. I want to hear from you. In a little bit of other news, I am really excited. My EBT formula year-long program is out. You're going to want to sign up for this. We're going to be starting in February. There's only a few spots left. If you are just feeling like, you know what, this is not where I thought I was going to be, I'm going to be able to come in and help you to figure out what truly is it that is going wrong in your business and how you can start to change that, what steps you need to take. And I'm going to give you the exact roadmap to do it. So for more information, you can visit our website. You can also email me. I'm happy to jump on a call with you to see if this program is even a fit for you. I'm really excited about it. We have an amazing group that are with us. So you might be just the perfect one that we need to add to this group. So no matter what it is that you're doing today, whether you are finding a way to position to profit, whether you are figuring out how you're going to make people question you, or whether you're signing up for my program so you can get all of that in one, make sure that you take time to have some fun. Because as I always say, if you're not having fun, why are you doing it?